Vishnupada Ashtatara Shatashma Chila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalapa Vishwam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashma Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityalapa Vishwam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashma Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalapa Vishwa Mahabhagavat Srila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityalapa Vishwa Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nityalapa Vishwa Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopala Patadash Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namachay Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Vaja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Vidatti Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Mona Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Tai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari. Radhe Radhe Gargaraj and Dandavat Pranam Indira Mataji Hari Bol. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Namine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalai Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tar Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Prabrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipaya no Virahaka Tara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Bhinedu Sangsarva Bhuta Hridaya Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayan Shrinvatang Svakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Ridantasto Hyabadrani Vidunati Suritsatam Nashta Prayashvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tavai Vasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamam Charanantikam Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshai Kshiptashtakama Dittarangamadhe Kripa Tam Sharanam Prapana Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Okay, I'm just opening up. Actually, let's see. That's what we're reading today. So Reading about Lord Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service. Today we'll be reading, all the limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. And yesterday we read about Yam and Niyam. And today we'll read about Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahara, Dhāraṇā, Dhyan, and Samadhi. And then the description of the Lord's form for performing dhāraṇā. Meditation on the Lord's form, the beauty of the Lord's face, his eyes, bodily features, Srivatsa, Kaustuva, Pitambara, etc. So that's what we're reading today. And just a little recap of what we read yesterday about Yam and Niyam. Kapila Dev, he says, I will describe the yoga system, Bhakti Mishra Ashtanga Yoga. So that's Ashtanga Yoga mixed with Bhakti. That's what he's teaching us. The object of which is to concentrate the mind. By following this, the mind attains the joyful spiritual path. And then in Yama Niyam, so we read about executing prescribed duties to the best of the ability, avoiding performing duties not allotted, satisfied with what is achieved by the Lord's grace, worshipping the lotus feet of a spiritual master, cessation of conventional religious practices, being attracted to those which lead to salvation. Those things which lead to salvation. Eating very frugally, always remaining in a secluded place, non-violence, truthfulness, refraining from theft, possessing only whatever is necessary, celibacy, austerity, cleanliness, study of the Vedas, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and silence. These are all the yams and niyams, the rules and regulations of Ashtanga Yoga. What is it? Rules and prohibitions, right? I think so. So, actually, we didn't read the fourth verse. We read up to the third verse, so we'll read about Socham, Swadhyaya, all that. Okay. Oh, and I'm just moving this to my second screen. Let me open that up. Sucharu, okay. And Haribo, Raseshwari Mataji. Okay. There. Okay. Ahimsa satyamasteyam yavarartha parigraha brahmacharyam tapasocham swadhyaya purusharchanam. One should practice non-violence and truthfulness, should avoid thieving, and be satisfied with possessing as much as he needs for his maintenance. He should abstain from sex life, perform austerity, be clean, study the Vedas, and worship the supreme form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Purusharchanam in this verse means worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially the form of Lord Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed by Arjuna that Krishna is the original Purush, or the personality of Godhead, Purusham Shashvatam. Therefore, in yoga practice, one not only must concentrate his mind on the person of Krishna, but also must worship the form of the deity of Krishna daily. A brahmachari practices celibacy, controlling his sex life. One cannot enjoy unrestricted sex life and practice yoga. This is rascaldom. So-called yogis advertise that one can go on enjoying as one likes and simultaneously become a yogi. But this is totally unauthorized. It is very clearly explained here that one must observe celibacy. Brahmacharya means that one leads his life simply in relationship with Brahman, or in full Krishna consciousness. Those who are too addicted to sex life cannot observe the regulations which will lead them to Krishna consciousness. Sex life should be restricted to persons who are married. A person whose sex life is restricted in marriage is also called a brahmachari. Whoa, that's interesting. The word asteyam is also very important for a yogi. Asteyam also means to refrain from theft. In the broader sense, everyone who accumulates more than he needs is a thief. According to spiritual communism, one cannot possess more than he needs for his personal maintenance. That is the law of nature. Anyone who accumulates more money or more possessions than he needs is called a thief, and one who simply accumulates wealth without spending for sacrifice or for worship of the personality of Godhead is a great thief. Swadhyaya means reading the authorized Vedic scriptures. Even if one is not Krishna conscious and is practicing the yoga system, he must read standard Vedic literatures in order to understand. Performance of yoga alone is not sufficient. Narottam Das Thakur, a great devotee and acharya in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, says that all spiritual activities should be understood from three sources, namely saintly persons, standard scriptures, and the spiritual master. These three guides are very important for progress in spiritual life. The spiritual master prescribes standard literature for the prosecution of the yoga of devotional service, and he himself speaks only from scriptural reference. Therefore, reading standard scriptures is necessary for executing yoga. Practicing yoga without reading the standard literatures is simply a waste of time. Maunam sarasana jaya stairyam prana jaya shanai pratyaharas chendriyanam vishayan manasa hridi. One must observe silence, acquire steadiness by practicing different yogic postures, control the breathing of the vital air, withdraw the senses from sense objects, and thus concentrate the mind on the heart. Well, what is this? This is now asana, right? I guess, yeah. Asana, pranayam, pratyahara. Okay, these are, now he's talking about asana, pranayam, and pratyahara. And the next verse will be dhāraṇā, dhyana, and samadhi. Okay. Purport. The yogic practices in general and hatha yoga in particular are not ends in themselves. They are means to the ends of attaining steadiness. First, one must be able to sit properly, asana, and then the mind and attention will become steady enough for practicing yoga. Generally, one must control the circulation of vital air, pranayam. With such control, he will be able to withdraw the senses from sense objects. In the previous verse, it is stated that one must observe celibacy. The most important aspect of sense control is controlling sex life. That is called brahmacharya. By practicing the different sitting postures and controlling the vital air, one can control and restrain the senses from unrestricted sense enjoyment. Swadeshnyanam ekadeshe manasa pranadharanam vaikunta lilabhidhyanam samadhanam tatatmana. Fixing the vital air and the mind in one of the 6 circles of vital air circulation within the body, thus concentrating one's mind on the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called samadhi, or samadhana, of the mind. Purport. There are 6 circles of vital air circulation within the body. The first circle is within the belly. The second circle is within the area of the heart. The third is in the area of the lungs. The fourth is on the palate. The fifth is between the eyebrows. And the highest and 6th circle is above the brain. One has to fix his mind on the circulation of the vital air and thus think of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. It is never mentioned that one should concentrate on the impersonal void, or void. It is clearly stated, Vaikunta Lila. Lila means pastimes. Unless this absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, has transcendental activities, where is the scope for thinking of these pastimes? It is through the process of devotional service, chanting and hearing of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that one can achieve this concentration. As described in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the Lord appears and disappears according to his relationships with different devotees. The Vedic literatures contain many narrations of the Lord's pastimes, including the Battle of Kurukshetra and historical facts relating to the life and precepts of devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and Ambarish Maharaj. One need only concentrate his mind on one such narration and become always absorbed in its thought. Then he will be in samadhi. Samadhi is not an artificial bodily state. It is the state achieved when the mind is virtually absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eteranyascha patibhir manadushtam satpatam bodhyayunjitas shanakar jita prana yanandrita. By these processes, or any other true process, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Eter Anyaischa. The general yoga process entails observing the rules and regulations, practicing the different sitting postures. So rules and regulations, that's niyam, practicing the different sitting postures, asana, concentrating the mind on the vital circulation of the air, that's pranayam, and then thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Vaikuntha pastimes. That would be like what? Pratyahara, withdrawing the senses from material objects to concentrate the mind in the heart. Dhāraṇā, dhyan, and samadhi. Those are all with concentration, isn't it? Okay. This is the general process of yoga. The same concentration can be achieved by other recommended processes, and therefore anyascha, other methods, also can be applied. The essential point is that the mind, which is contaminated by material attraction, has to be bridled and concentrated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It cannot be fixed on something void or impersonal. For this reason, so-called yoga practices of voidism and impersonalism are not recommended in any standard yoga shastra. The real yogi is the devotee, because his mind is always concentrated on the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is the topmost yoga system. Sochodeshte patishtapya vijatasanāsanam tasmin swasti samasina rijukaya samabhyasit. After controlling one's mind in sitting postures, one should spread a seat in a secluded and sanctified place. Sit there in an easy posture, keeping the body erect, and practice breath control. Purport. Sitting in an easy posture is called swasti samasina. It is recommended in the yoga scripture that one should put the soles of the feet between the two thighs and ankles and sit straight. That posture will help one to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This very process is also recommended in Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter. It is further suggested that one should sit in a secluded, sanctified spot. The seat should consist of deerskin and kusha grass, topped with cotton. Pranasya shodayen margam purakum bhakarechikai pratikulena vachitam hitastiram achanchalam. And just remember that Bhagavad Gita verse is Chailo Jana Pushottaram. One should sit on it. Deerskin, kusha grass, topped with cotton. Forgot how the verse begins, but that's the part. Chailo Jana Pushottaram. The yogi should clear the passage of vital air by breathing in the following manner. He should inhale very deeply, then hold the breath in, and finally exhale. Did I read this verse? I did. Yeah, I did. Anasvashadayamaridam purakumbhakarechakai patikolena vachitam yatastira achanchalam. Yeah, the yogi should clear the passage of vital air by breathing in the following manner. First, he should inhale very deeply, then hold the breath in, and finally exhale. Or reversing the process, the yogi can first exhale, hold the breath outside, and finally inhale. This is done so that the minds may become steady and free from external disturbances. Purport. These breathing exercises are performed to control the mind and fix it on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo. The devotee Ambarish Maharaj fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna 24 hours a day. The process of Krishna consciousness is to chant Hare Krishna and hear the sound attentively, so that the mind is fixed upon the transcendental vibration of Krishna's name, which is non-different from Krishna the personality. The real purpose of controlling the minds by the prescribed method of clearing the passage of life air is achieved immediately if one fixes the minds directly on the lotus feet of Krishna. The Hatha Yoga system, or breathing system, is especially recommended for those who are very absorbed in the concept of bodily existence. But one who can perform the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna can fix the mind more easily. 3 different activities are recommended for clearing the passage of breath: Purak, Kumbhak, and Rechak. Inhaling the breath is Purak, sustaining it within is called Kumbhak, and finally exhaling is called Rechak. These recommended processes can also be performed in the reverse order. After exhaling, one can keep the air outside for some time and then inhale. The nerves throughout which inhalation and exhalation are conducted are technically called Ida and Pingala. The ultimate purpose of clearing the Ida and Pingala passages is to divert the mind from material enjoyment. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, one's mind is his enemy, and one's mind is also his friend. Its position varies according to the different dealings of the living entity. If we divert our mind to thoughts of material enjoyment, then our mind becomes an enemy. And if we concentrate our mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, then our mind is our friend. By the yoga system of Purak, Kumbhak, and Rechak, or by directly fixing the mind on the sound vibration of Krishna or on the form of Krishna, the same purpose is achieved. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one must practice the breathing exercise, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. By virtue of these processes of control, the mind cannot wander to external thoughts, Cetasa Nanya Gamina. Thus, one can fix his mind constantly on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and attain Yati. They can attain him. Practicing the yoga system of exercise and breath control is very difficult for a person in this stage, and therefore Lord Chaitanya recommended Kirtaniya Sada Hari. One should always chant the holy name of the Supreme Lord Krishna, because Krishna is the most suitable name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The name Krishna and the Supreme Person Krishna are non-different, Nama Nami, Bhinatvam Nama Namino. Therefore, if one concentrates his mind on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, the same result is achieved. Haribo. Yes, Haribo. Manochiratsya virajam jittashvasasya yogina vaivagni yata lobha dhamatam tyajati vaimalam. This must be especially interesting for you, Roseshwari Mataji, right? Because you are a very very well-practiced yoga teacher. And so you probably know all these yam, niyam, pratyahar, all these things like very well. The yogis who practice such breathing exercises are very soon freed from all mental disturbances, just as gold, when put into fire and fanned with air, becomes free from all impurities. Purport. This process of purifying the mind is also recommended by Lord Chaitanya. He says that one should chant Hare Krishna. He says further, Param Vijayate, all glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtan. All glories are given to the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, because as soon as one begins this process of chanting, the mind becomes purified. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. By chanting the holy name of Krishna, one is cleansed of the dirt that accumulates in the mind. One can purify the mind either by the breathing process or by the chanting process, just as one can purify gold by putting it in a fire and fanning it with a bellows. Pranayama radadahe doshan dhāraṇā bhishchakilbhishan pratyaharena sangsargan dhyanena nishvaram gunan. By practicing the process of pranayam, one can eradicate the contamination of his psychological condition. And by concentrating the mind, one can become free from all sinful activities. By restraining the senses, one can free himself from material association. And by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become free from the three modes of material attachment. Purport. According to Ayurvedic medical science, the three items, kapha, pitta, and vayu, phlegm, bile, and air, maintain the physiological condition of the body. Modern medical science does not accept the physiological analysis as valid, but the ancient Ayurvedic process of treatment is based upon these items. Ayurvedic treatment concerns itself with the cause of these three elements, which are mentioned in many places in the Bhāgavatam as the basic conditions of the body. Here it is recommended that by practicing the breathing process of pranayam, one can be released from contamination created by the principal physiological elements. By concentrating the mind, one can become free from sinful activities, and by withdrawing the senses, that's pratyahara, right? One can free himself from material association. Ultimately, one has to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to be elevated to the transcendental position where he is no longer affected by the three modes of material nature. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that one who engages himself in unalloyed devotional service at once becomes transcendental to the three modes of material nature and immediately realizes his identification with Brahman. Sagunan samatitta yaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in Bhakti Yoga. But the practice of Bhakti Yoga is easier for this age. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti Yoga is a feasible process that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti Yoga and other yogas have as their ultimate goal the same personality of Godhead. But one is practical and the others are difficult. One has to purify his physiological condition by concentration and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is called samadhi. Say Sri Bhakti says, yes, but I really like taking deeper Krishna focus. Yes. Yada manasam virajan yogena susamahitam kashtam bhagavato dhyayat swanasagra valokana. When the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga, one should concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed eyes and see the form of the personality of Godhead. Purport. It is clearly mentioned here that one has to meditate upon the expansion of Vishnu. The word kashtam refers to Paramatma, the expansion of Vishnu. Bhagavata refers to Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Godhead is Krishna. From him comes the first expansion, Baladev, and from Baladev comes Sankarshan, Aniruddha, and many other forms. followed by the Purusha avatars. As mentioned in the previous verses, Purusharthanam, this Purusha is represented as the Paramatma, or a Supersoul. A description of the Supersoul upon whom one must meditate will be given in the following verses. In this verse, it is clearly stated that one must meditate by fixing the vision on the tip of the nose and concentrating one's mind on the kala, or plenary expansion of Vishnu. Prasannavadanam bhojam parmagarbharunekshanam nilotpala dalashyamam shankachakra gadadharam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a cheerful, lotus-like countenance, with ruddy eyes like the interior of a lotus, and a swarthy body like the petals of a blue lotus. What's swarthy mean? Anyways, it's taking a while to search. Oh, come on. Okay. Swarthy means dark complexioned. Huh. Okay. Cool word. He bears a conch, discus, and mace in three of his hands. Purport. It is definitely recommended herein that one concentrate his mind upon the form of Vishnu. There are 12 different forms of Vishnu, which are described in teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It's a book by Śrīla Prabhupada. One cannot concentrate his mind on anything void or impersonal. The mind should be fixed on the personal form of the Lord, whose attitude is cheerful, as described in this verse. Bhagavad Gita states that meditation on the impersonal or void features is very troublesome to the meditator. Those who are attached to the impersonal or void features of meditation have to undergo a difficult process because we are not accustomed to concentrating our minds upon anything impersonal. Actually, such concentration is not even possible. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that one should concentrate his mind on the personality of Godhead. The color of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is described here as Nilotpala Dala, meaning that it is like that of a lotus flower, with petals tinted blue and white. People always ask why Krishna is blue. The color of the Lord has not been imagined by an artist. It is described in authoritative scripture. In the Brahma Samhita also, the color of Krishna's body is composed to that of a bluish cloud. The color of the Lord is not a poetical imagination. There are authoritative descriptions in the Brahma Samhita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and many of the Puranas of the Lord's body, his weapons, and all other paraphernalia. The Lord's appearance is described here as Parma Garbhanurekshanam. His eyes resemble the inside of a lotus flower, and in his 4 hands he holds the 4 symbols, concha, discus, mace, and lotus. Lasat pankaja kinjalka pitako sheyavasasam Shrivatsa vakshasam prajat kostubha mukta kandaram. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus. On his breasts he bears the mark of the Shrivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kaustuba gem is suspended from his neck. Purport. The exact color of the garment of the Supreme Lord is described as saffron yellow, just like the pollen of a lotus flower. The Kaustuba gem hanging on his chest is also described. His neck is beautifully decorated with jewels and pearls. The Lord is full of 6 opulences, one of which is wealth. He is very richly dressed with valuable jewels, which are not visible within this material world. Matadvire pakalaya paritangvanamalaya Paratyaharabhalaya Kiritangadhanupuram. He also wears around his neck a garland of attractive sylvan flowers, and a swarm of bees, intoxicated by its delicious fragrance, hums about the garlands. He is further superbly adorned with a pearl necklace, a crown, and pairs of armlets, bracelets, and anklets. Purport. From this description, it appears that the flower garland of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fresh. Actually, in Vaikuntha, or the spiritual sky, there is nothing but freshness. Even the flowers picked from the trees and plants remain fresh, for everything in the spiritual sky retains its originality and does not fade. The fragrance of the flowers picked from the trees made into the garlands does not fade, for both the trees and the flowers are spiritual. When the flower is taken from the tree, it remains the same. It does not lose its aroma. The bees are equally attracted to the flowers, whether they are on the garland or on the trees. The significance of spirituality is that everything is eternal and inexhaustible. Everything taken from everything remains everything. Or, as has been stated, in the spiritual world, 1 minus 1 equals 1. And 1 plus 1 equals 1. The bees hum around the fresh flowers, and their sweet sound is enjoyed by the Lord. The Lord's bangles, necklace, crown, and anklets are all bedecked with invaluable jewels. Since the jewels and pearls are spiritual, there is no material calculation of their value. This is a lot, this is a lot nicer form of dhāraṇā than just thinking about nothing, isn't it? Kanchi gunola sachronim hridyam bhoja vishtaranam darshaniyattamam shantam manonayana vardhanam. His loins and hips encircled by a girdle, he stands on the lotus of his devotee's heart. He is most charming to look at, and his serene aspect gladdens the eyes and souls of the devotees who behold him. Purport. The word darshaniyattamam, which is used in this verse, means that the Lord is so beautiful that the devotee yogi does not wish to see anything else. His desire to see beautiful objects is completely satisfied by the sight of the Lord. In the material world, we want to see beauty, but the desire is never satisfied. Because of material contamination, all the properties we feel in the material world are ever unsatisfied. But when our desires to see, hear, touch, etc. are dovetailed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are on the level of the topmost perfection. True that, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam says. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its eternal form is so beautiful and pleasing to the heart of the devotee, he does not attract the impersonalists who want to meditate on his impersonal aspect. Such impersonal meditation is simply fruitless labor. The actual yogis, with half-closed eyes, fix on the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not upon anything void or impersonal. Apiccha darshanam shashvat sarvaloka namaskritam santam vayasikaishore Bhrittanugrahakataram. The Lord is eternally very beautiful, and he is worshipable by all the inhabitants of every planet. He is ever youthful and always eager to bestow his blessing upon his devotees. Purport. The word Sarva Loka Namaskritam means that he is worshipable by everyone on every planet. There are innumerable planets in the material world, and innumerable planets in the spiritual world as well. On each planet there are innumerable inhabitants who worship the Lord, for the Lord is worshipable by all but the impersonalists. The Supreme Lord is very beautiful. The word Shashvat is significant. It is not that he appears beautiful to the devotees, but is ultimately impersonal. Shashvat means ever existing. That beauty is not temporary, it is ever existing. He is always youthful. In the Brahma Samhita, verse 33, it is also stated, Advaitamarchutamanade mananta rupam adyam purana purusham navayovanam cha. The original person is one without a second, yet he never appears old. He always appears as ever fresh as a blooming youth. The Lord's facial expression always indicates that he is ready to show favor and benediction to the devotees. For the non-devotees, however, he is silent. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, although he acts equally to everyone because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and because all living entities are his sons, he is especially inclined to those engaged in devotional service. The same fact is confirmed here. He is always anxious to show favor to the devotees, just as the devotees are always eager to render service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is also very eager to bestow benediction upon the pure devotees. Kirtanya tirtayashasam punyashloka yashaskaram dhyaye devam samagrangam yavanachyavate mana. The glory of the Lord is always worth singing, for his glories enhance the glories of his devotees. One should therefore meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and upon his devotees. I like that. One should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. So we don't just meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but we also meditate upon his devotees. And the glories of the Lord enhance the glories of his devotees. That's also really nice. One should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. Purport. One has to fix his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. When one is accustomed to thinking of one of the innumerable forms of the Lord, Krishna, Vishnu, Ram, Narayan, etc., he has reached the perfection of yoga. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. A person who has developed pure love for the Lord and whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of transcendental loving exchange always sees within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotees especially see the Lord in the beautiful blackish form of Sham Sundar. That is the perfection of yoga. This yoga system should be continued until the mind does not, I don't know this word, vacillate. Yeah, vacillate. Waver between different, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I know this word actually. Waver between different opinions or actions. Be indecisive. So this system of yoga should be continued until the mind does not vacillate for a moment. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Param Sada Pashyanti Suraya. The form of Vishnu is the highest individuality and is always visible to the sages and saintly persons. The same purpose is served when a devotee worships the form of the Lord in the temple. There is no difference between devotional service in the temple and meditation on the form of the Lord, since the form of the Lord is the same, whether he appears within the mind or in some concrete element. There are eight kinds of forms recommended for the devotees to see. The forms may be made out of sand, clay, wood, or stone. They may be contemplated within the mind or made of jewels, metal, or painted colors. But all the forms are of the same value. It is not that one who meditates on the form within the mind sees differently from one who worships the form in the temple. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is absolute, and there is therefore no difference between the two. The impersonalists who desire to regard the eternal form of the Lord imagine some round figure. They especially prefer the Omkar, which also has form. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that Omkar is the letter form of the Lord. Similarly, There are statue forms and painting forms of the Lord. Another significant word in this verse is Punya Shloka Yashaskaram. The devotee is called Punya Shloka. As one becomes purified by chanting the holy name of the Lord, so one can become purified simply by chanting the name of a holy devotee. Wow, that's really nice. As one becomes purified by chanting the holy name of the Lord, so one can become purified simply by chanting the name of a holy devotee. The pure devotee of the Lord and the Lord himself are non-different. It is sometimes feasible to chant the name of a holy devotee. This is a very sanctioned process. Lord Chaitanya was once chanting the holy names of the gopis when his students criticized him. Why are you chanting the names of the gopis? Why not Krishna? Lord Chaitanya was irritated by the criticism, and so there was some misunderstanding between him and the students. He wanted to chastise them for desiring to instruct him on the transcendental process of chanting. The beauty of the Lord is that the devotees who are connected with his activities are also glorified. Arjuna, Prahlad, Janak Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, and many other devotees were not even in the renounced order of life, but were householders. Some of them, such as Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj, were born of demoniac families. Prahlad Maharaj's father was a demon, and Bali Maharaj was the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. But still they have become famous because of their association with the Lord. Anyone who is eternally associated with the Lord is glorified with the Lord. The conclusion is that a perfect yogi should always be accustomed to seeing the form of the Lord, and unless the mind is fixed in that way, he should continue practicing yoga. All right, so that's all for today. 7:57, cool, we finished in good time. So we read about that. The description of performing dhāraṇā. And tomorrow we will read about dhyan, meditation on the individual limbs of the Lord. And what else? And liberation of the yogi and his state of mind. Understanding of the yogi. Okay, maybe we can even finish the chapter tomorrow. Right. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. No, we won't finish the chapter tomorrow, it's long. Let me get my madanga actually. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimajula Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shri Gurudev ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimajula Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimad Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimad Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishnu Mahabhagavat Shila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishnu Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Rupa Nuga Gauriya Guru Varga ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dashagunath, Sharda Goswami Prabhu ki Jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki Jai, Namachay Shila Haridas Thakur ki Jai, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय, श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जाय, सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जाय, श्री राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद की जाय, श्री मुन देवी गंग देवी की जाय, श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जाय, श्री भक्ति देवी की जाय, श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जाय, श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जाय, श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जाय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जाय, समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय, श्रीनिताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवश च कृष्ण भक्ति प्रददेवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। All right, Dandavat pranams to you all. See you tomorrow. Dandavat pranams, Indira Mataji, Raseshwari Mataji. I can't see who you are. It just says Facebook user, because in the Facebook group, it always just says Facebook user for some reason. I don't know why. But Dandavat pranams. Haribol.